By Judy Capco. Key insight: your practice schedule should closely match the reality of your practice, not the way you wish the practice function. All's well that ends well. But sometimes the road to get there has some unexpected twists and turns, such is the case when it comes to mastering the appointment schedule. Over the years, most medical practices, regardless of their size or specialty, have struggled to find a way to fine-tune the appointment schedule. Somehow it never seems quite right. The doctor doesn't stay on schedule and rarely gets out of the office on time. When this happens, everyone pays the price: physicians, patients, and staff. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon. For some practices, managing the appointment system seems like an impossible feat. The phone rings off the hook with patients who need appointments, some more urgently than others. Every day, staff members end up double booking sick patients when the next real opening on the books is 3 weeks away. Susan Johnson, MD, a busy primary care physician from Texas, experienced these same problems. She struggled with the way patients were scheduled. There were never enough hours in the day, and patients sometimes waited weeks to get an appointment. Adding a licensed nurse practitioner was helpful, but it didn't solve the problem for this popular physician. Patients seemed willing to wait to see her, despite their frustration at the long delay. The practice tried a variety of techniques to alleviate the problem, but just couldn't get a handle on managing the appointment schedule. Finally, Dr. Johnson brought me in as a consultant to examine the situation and come up with a solution. Looking at the indicators, I began the investigation with a search for the next available appointment and discovered that the first opening for an established patient was in 8 days, with 18 days for a new patient. If someone wanted an annual exam, the wait was 100 days. A review of the previous week's schedule revealed a pattern of double booking 3 to 5 appointment slots each day. The receptionist told me there was no other choice. Patients who didn't schedule because of the long wait sometimes ended up calling back in a few days because they didn't get better and had to get in. Sick patients were getting crammed into an already full schedule. It didn't take a genius to realize that the demand for appointments far exceeded existing capabilities. Next, I observed the clinical staff members working through their day. The reception and exam rooms were full. The physician and nurse practitioner fell further and further behind. To get back on schedule, they let their charting go until the end of the day and ended up leaving a stack of work behind for the next day. When I clocked the wait time for patients, it averaged 35 minutes from scheduled appointment time until they were room, coupled with an additional wait of at least 15 minutes once they were in the exam room. No one of the staff was thankful for no-show patients. With this kind of backlog, they rarely got out of the office on time. Staff members voiced concern about how much overtime they were putting in. The findings were telling. The classic symptoms of an unmanaged scheduling system were a reality for this hard-working practice. 1. Demand greater than access, delaying the time it takes for patients to get an appointment. 2. Frequent double booking of appointments. 3. More than occasional no-show or late cancellation. 4. Long wait times for patients once they arrived in the office. 5. Physician getting out of the office late, midday and evening. 6. Charting incomplete at the end of the day. 7. Continual staff overtime. Getting to the root of the problem. Now it was time to dig deeper. I proceeded by examining 30 random daily schedules from the previous 3 months, looking for underlying factors and getting answers to these critical questions. How many patients were seen each day? Was there variability in the daily patient load? Was the demand greater on specific days or times of the day? What trends were contributing to the overall problem? The analysis revealed erratic scheduling patterns, but several trends were detected. Typically, more patients were double booked in the late mornings and late afternoons, and nearly twice as many work-ins were added to the schedule on Mondays. The cancellations and no-shows were scattered through the day and throughout the week, with slightly more on Fridays. Missed appointments averaged at least 7 a day, nearly double the number of work-ins. The variance in daily production waned. Both providers' work ranged from a low of $2,836 to a high of $3,984, more than a 40% difference. If the high of $3,984 became the norm, this practice would realize a substantial gain in net revenue. The amount of time the physician was out of the office impeded overall production. Dr. Johnson's typical schedule consisted of 8 half-day sessions a week, with a day off at midweek. She also averaged 3 additional sessions off per month for various personal and business reasons. This did not include the 7 holidays and 6 weeks out the previous year for vacation and continuing education. I reviewed the existing scheduling templates to assess how effective they were. 4 different types of patient visits were being scheduled. 1. New patient, 30 minutes. 2. Established patient, 15 minutes. 3. Pre-employment physical, 45 minutes. And 4. Annual physical, 60 minutes. I needed to determine whether these time slots were realistic. How much time did each of the appointment types really need? And did the physician and nurse practitioner require the same amount of time? For 10 days, the nurses and the providers noted extra information for each patient seen in the office. The nurses tracked the type of patient visit, and both the physician and nurse practitioner documented the actual time they spent with the patient. This information helped determine how realistic the existing templates were and if they needed to be revamped. 1. The findings revealed that the physician spent less time with patients than the schedule allotted. Figure 1. This held true for the nurse practitioner as well, except for established patient appointments. The greatest disparity for both providers was the annual physical, where the schedule dedicated 60 minutes, far more than either provider required. Many of the working patients presented with one symptom, such as a rash, earache, mold check, or a common cold. These patients required less than 10 minutes of the provider's time. 70, 60, 50, 40, 2,654,322, 30, 20, 10, 0. Schedule. Established patient 15, new patient 30, pre-employed 45, annual exam 60, MD actual, ONP actual 917, 20, 0, 30, 30, 28, 32. Figure 1. Time dedicated to each patient type. Scheduled MD actual, MP actual. The traditional 15-minute appointment increments weren't appropriate and didn't provide the flexibility needed to match the actual time providers were spending with patients. Shifting to a schedule with 10-minute increments and revising the appointment time parameters would give the practice needed flexibility. Greater capacity and improved access would follow. I then asked the receptionist to track the number of patients who were not being accommodated when they called to request an appointment. For 10 days, she kept a log that revealed 5 to 9 patients who could not be fit into the schedule each day. Some of these patients would simply forget about it, but for others it resulted in telephone messages for the doctor and unreimbursed medical advice by phone. Additional data were obtained from the practice management system PMS to capture the monthly volume of new patients, established patients, and patients needing annual exams seen by each provider. This helped clarify how to structure the new templates based on volume and patient type. The financial impact. The lost revenue from no-shows and late cancellations was assessed by calculating the average visit charge, multiplied by the average number of lost appointments, subtracting the revenue gained from the double booked patients. The estimated annual loss of revenue from missed appointments turned out to be more than $125,000. This certainly got the attention of the physician. Additional revenue of more than $62,000 could be captured if Dr. Johnson worked the same number of sessions as the typical primary care physician. Table 1. Table 1. Time out of office comparative study. Vacation/CME. Holidays. Canceled sessions. Out. The practice typical PCP. 6 weeks equals 48 sessions. 4 weeks equals 30. 90. 12. 7. 8 sessions. 54. CME. The unmanaged schedule also contributed to the cost of overtime wages for the practice. Each receptionist clocked in an average of 15 hours a month in overtime, and each nurse as much as 22 hours per month, for an estimated $72,000 a year. The annual missed revenue and avoidable overtime cost was projected to be more than $250,000 a year. There were other considerations that cost the practice as well. The first was patients, new and established, scheduling with other area physicians because of poor access. These patients were unlikely to return, representing a long-term loss to the practice. Second, the unmanaged scheduling system resulted in less satisfied patients, generating word-of-mouth damage to the reputation of the practice and loss of future referrals. Defining the objectives. The analysis revealed the impact of an unmanaged appointment schedule and crystallized in everyone's mind the issues that needed to be resolved. 3 primary objectives were outlined. 1. Improve access. 2. Develop a manageable scheduling system. A. Create realistic templates. B. Balance demand with capacity. C. Stay on time. D. Reduce no-show and late cancellation rates. 3. Improve time management. A. Stay on time. B. Reduce overtime. Accomplishing these objectives would also result in improved patient access, patient satisfaction, and the overall patient experience. Staff buy-in was critical to accomplishing these objectives. Achieving the stated goals required a dramatic shift in patient flow and scheduling. It took a leap of faith for Dr. Johnson and her staff to imagine balancing demand with capacity, staying on schedule, and getting out of the office on time. 10 more patients could be seen each day if no shows were reduced to a minimum and a tighter scheduling system was developed. Furthermore, access would improve immediately, and the need to double book would soon vanish. This would go a long way toward getting control over the scheduling system and getting everyone out of the office on time. Mastering the schedule. Providers were spending between 9 and 32 minutes with each patient. Some of these patients had a simple ear infection and others had chronic conditions and multiple health problems. The new template needed to have the flexibility to meet these variations. Based on the objective data collected in meetings with the nurses and the providers, 3 types of appointments were developed: quick check, standard, and complex, based on 10-minute increments up to 30 minutes. Table 2. Table 2. Types of appointments. Quick check, 10 minutes. Single symptom, rash/mole, ear infection, blood pressure check, simple recheck, minor complaints. Standard, 20 minutes. Multiple symptoms, infections. Established patient with chronic problems. Monitoring patient with multiple problems. New patient with minor complaints. Complex, 30 minutes. Annual exam. Pre-employment physical. Established patient with complications. New patient with chronic or major complaints. Implementing these appointment times and time parameters, along with better management of missed appointments, would yield sufficient gains to hold slots for same-day appointments. This would enable the practice to adequately accommodate new patients and manage the existing patient load appropriately. A modified open access system emerged, a system that would accommodate appointments the same day patients requested them. The bulk of pre-scheduled appointments were expected to be for new patients, annual exams, and rechecks. To avoid the historical Monday crunch, employment physicals and annual exams would not be scheduled on Mondays. This would result in improved workflow and better time management. When finalized, the new template placed a hold on 22 10-minute appointment slots per day, releasing them at noon on the prior day. Several of the openings were consecutive, allowing staff to schedule quick checks or standard appointments, depending on the needs of the patient. These open slots would go a long way in meeting the pent-up demand that kept as many as 9 patients a day from getting appointments and led to the practice of double booking an average of 4 patients a day. In addition, the practice would be better positioned to add new patients, handle growth, and manage the day. To accommodate pent-up demand and improve access immediately, the providers were asked to expand their daily schedule by 1 hour for the first 6 weeks to eliminate a future backlog. At the end of the 6-week period, it was expected that demand and capacity would be balanced. The same-day appointments would be readily available for patients. The providers would then be able to return to their regular hours. The new templates were presented at a staff meeting. When staff members realized there would be added capacity and more open appointments, they were motivated and supported the new scheduling system. Preparing for implementation. Getting a handle on missed appointments was a critical factor in optimizing the schedule and improving patient service. The general lack of regard for scheduled appointments had to be addressed. Everyone, providers, staff, and patients, needed to respect and honor scheduled appointments. This meant changing behavior and attitudes to reduce the missed appointment rate before implementing the new scheduling system. This required more training for the practice team. The manager and I prepared several pre-implementation and services to overcome potential obstacles and reassure the staff. The first in service covered the consequences of missed appointments and ways the staff could help us lower the no-show rate by taking control of the schedule. Patients needed to view their appointments as a priority, and staff needed to send patients this message. Telephone scripts were prepared and used for role-playing. They included what to say and what not to say when. Confirming appointments or handling the no-show. We wanted to be sure the staff didn't unintentionally imply that patients had permission to ignore an appointment or cancel at the last minute. I took this opportunity to review the economic impact of no-shows and last-minute cancellations to help everyone understand how costly missed appointments are not only financially, but also regarding the disruption and loss of control that no-shows and double booking cause. I assured the staff members that they had the power to reduce missed appointments and explained the benefits they would gain: manageable workflow, less disruption, and predictable days. I provided the schedulers with a template appointment power words matrix. A sample is included with the toolbox forms to guide them with booking, confirming appointments, and handling patients with other scheduling issues. The message was clear: take control of the schedule, manage patient flow, and improve financial performance and continuity of care. The clinical staff worked with the manager to develop tools to guide the schedulers in adapting to the new templates and open access system. Because it was important for the schedulers to know what questions to ask patients to determine if they should schedule a quick check or standard appointment, the nurses developed cue cards with a list of probing questions for the schedulers to ask the patient. Together, the staff participated in an interactive workshop, discussing various elements of the open access system, how the patients were likely to respond, how the templates would work, the transition time frame, and the importance of communicating and working together to fine-tune the process during the implementation. The nurses agreed to provide additional assistance and further training for the schedulers during the adjustment period. 1. If the scheduler was unsure of what type of an appointment to schedule, the call was transferred to a nurse. 2. The nurses conducted weekly reviews with the schedulers. This provided an opportunity for open dialogue to further educate the schedulers, review the previous week's schedule, and discuss problems that emerged in appointments that were questionable. This was a continuing education process that strengthened the scheduler's skills and confidence. Managing the new templates effectively required optimizing each provider's time with patients. Nurses needed to do their part to have patients properly prepared for each visit. With the guidance of the manager, the providers and nurses developed a rooming matrix. A sample is included with the toolbox forms. The matrix listed the reason for the visit, the chief complaints, and the requirements needed to prepare a patient for the exam based on the reason for the visit. For example, an annual physical would require checking weight, height, blood pressure, temperature, respirations, and pulse. The nurse would also need to review medication, check allergies, obtain urine and blood samples, and instruct the patient to completely undress and put on a full gown. On the other hand, a patient with a dermatologic rash or mole simply would need to have his or her blood pressure and temperature taken, be questioned about allergies, and be instructed to undress as required to expose the area. The nurse would also need to ask how long the patient had the condition, and if it was painful or itch. To make the most of the exam rooms and improve flow, patient instructions and education needed to take place outside the examination room. A small storage room was converted into a patient education center. One of the nurses assumed responsibility for getting the center equipped with brochures and videos from pharmaceutical and equipment companies. Patient instructions, consent forms, and other such materials were organized in files. This room became a vital factor in keeping the providers on schedule. When patients needed special instructions or materials after the examination, a nurse took them to the center, completed the visit, and answered their questions. This freed the exam room for the next patient and allowed the doctor or nurse practitioner to move on to the next patient. The implementation. The final step was entering the new templates into the PMS. Because the appointment calendar was booked until March 15, the target date for implementation was set for May 1. Patient scheduling beyond May 1 would be scheduled using the new template. In the meantime, the schedulers worked to reduce missed appointments. In mid-April, patients were sent an announcement of same-day scheduling availability. The providers also expanded their schedule by 1 hour beginning May 1. Weekly meetings were held to keep communication open and make any adjustments that might be required during the first 30 days. Monitoring the results. A patient satisfaction survey conducted before implementing the new scheduling system served as a baseline, followed by quarterly surveys the first year and annually thereafter. Once the implementation process began, progress was closely observed. Everyone needed to stay on top of the schedule and take a critical look at what caused delays, taking steps to avoid a recurring pattern. Missed appointments were tracked, revealing a marked decrease in no-shows and last-minute cancellations. Follow-up time studies were conducted for 3 months to examine the progress being made with patient access and wait times. The practice management reports track productivity, patient visits, and charges for both the physician and the nurse practitioner, and payroll records revealed changes in overtime costs. Checking out the gains. The success of the revised appointment system was evident, with improvement in patient flow and access. Physician and staff efficiency skyrocketed. Tangible results at the 6-month mark that proved the practice had mastered the scheduling system included: patients were roomed within 5 minutes of arrival 93% of the time. Same-day access was available for established patients except for annual exams. No patient visits were scheduled within 5 days. Annual exams and pre-employment physicals were scheduled within 7 days. No-shows and late cancellations were reduced by 70%. Patient satisfaction with obtaining appointments went from 25% to 87%. Overtime was under control, cutting payroll costs by more than $5,000/month. Revenue increased by 22%. Physicians and staff got out of the office on time more than 90% of the time. The first 6 weeks were difficult, and the results were not evident for a number of months. During this time, some simple modifications to the original plan were required. The manager encountered a lack of confidence with some employees and minor resistance from one individual. A fair amount of reassurance and reinforcement was necessary before things stabilized. But in the end, everyone agreed it was well worth it. Since this project launched several years ago, the practice has remained dedicated to the modified appointment schedule and providing improved access to patients. They've deployed new electronic reminders to keep no-shows at bay, giving patients their preferred method of contact, voice call to their number of choice, text, or email. Notifications are sent to patients 3 days prior to their appointment using scripts similar to the ones used when staff called patients. This has been successful in increasing patient compliance with appointments. Furthermore, patient referrals skyrocketed once service improved, resulting in solid growth. Another physician has joined the practice and a second non-physician provider has been hired to meet the new demand. 1. At the time of this project, the doctor, and nurse practitioner made these notes on the patient's charge ticket. The timestamp system available in most modern EHRs can do the same provided it is used properly at each step in the patient flow. The secrets. 1. There are classic symptoms of an unmanaged scheduling system. 2. Templates based on actual time requirements increase productivity and time management. 3. Missed appointments are costly to the practice. 4. Careful planning and staff engagement are essential to designing and implementing a realistic scheduling system. 5. An open access scheduling system improves patient service. 6. Educating staff and giving them the tools they need enables them to make changes to improve productivity. 7. To gain support for change, communicate the benefits. Forms added to your toolbox. Appointment power words matrix. Phone tracking incoming calls. Roaming matrix patient prep standards. Chapter 3. The Perfect Receptionist in a High Deductible World. By Lori Morgan with Judy Catcall. Key insight. Now more than ever, respect, attention, and tools are critical to customer service success. In 2010, for the second edition of this book, Judy wrote about how dramatically the role of receptionist had changed in the first decade of the new millennium. It would have been hard to believe at the time, but the pace of